At my wife's funeral, my son told his wife, "Now we just need to deal with the old man." Those words hit me like a slap, snapping me awake amid my grief. I stood there, my hand clutching the cold handful of earth, not only saying goodbye to Rose, but also to the image of the father they assumed I was. They had no idea that I, a former sea captain, was ready to fight to protect my family's legacy. And when the storm came, they would face consequences they could never have foreseen. Please tell me where you are coming from when you watch this video and how you feel about family betrayal. It was Monday afternoon, October 7th, when I stood at the edge of Seaside Cemetery, watching them lower my Rose into the cold Maine earth. The Atlantic wind cut through my wool coat, carrying the salt tang of the sea and the heavy scent of funeral lilies. 47 years of marriage had come down to this, a handful of dirt, in my weathered palm, and the sound of waves crashing against granite cliffs below. The cemetery perched on a bluff overlooking Bar Harbor, where fishing boats bobbed in the gray afternoon light. In the distance, Mackenzie Lighthouse stood against the darkening sky, its white tower, a reminder of the life Rose and I had built together. She'd been the keeper of our stories, turning our lighthouse into more than just a navigation aid. She'd made it a repository of maritime history. Pastor Williams spoke about Rose's dedication to preserving Bar Harbor's heritage, about her 40 years teaching students to love history. But his words drifted away on the wind, lost in the vastness of my grief. Rose had been my anchor, my true north. At 74, I'd weathered plenty of storms during my Coast Guard years, but nothing had prepared me for this hollow ache. That's when I heard it, a whisper low and sharp cutting through my sorrow like a knife through fog. Now we just need to deal with the old sea captain. The voice belonged to my son Ryan, standing just feet away with his wife Vanessa. He thought I was lost in grief, too broken to notice anything beyond my pain. But 40 years of reading weather patterns had taught me to pay attention to subtle signs others missed. "The lighthouse property is worth $25 million, Ryan." Vanessa's response carried the cold precision of someone who'd done her homework. "We can't let his stubbornness ruin this opportunity." I kept my eyes fixed on Rose's casket expression, unchanged, but something shifted inside me. The fog of grief crystallized into something harder, clearer. I'd spent my life guiding ships safely through dangerous passages, and I recognized the sound of pirates when I heard it. My son and daughter-in-law stood there in funeral blacks, perfect masks of mourning painted on their faces, while they discussed my future as if I were already dead. They thought they were dealing with a broken old man whose judgment was clouded by sorrow. They had no idea this old sea captain was about to chart a course they'd never seen coming. As I let the handful of cold earth fall onto Rose's casket, I wasn't just saying goodbye to my wife. I was saying goodbye to the man they thought I was, the grieving widower who needed their guidance and protection. The lighthouse beam swept across the cemetery in its eternal rhythm, and I took it as a sign. Rose always said lighthouses don't just guide ships to safety. They also warn them away from dangerous waters. It was time to turn on the beacon. After the funeral service, I returned to Mackenzie Lighthouse, the place Rose and I had called home for 40 years. The wind whipped around me, carrying the salty scent of the Atlantic and the weight of my grief. The lighthouse stood tall against the darkening sky, a beacon that had guided countless ships safely to shore. But today it felt like a prison, a reminder of the life I had shared with Rose. As I stepped inside, the familiar creaking of the wooden floor seemed to echo the memories that flooded my mind. Each room held a fragment of our shared history. The kitchen where we cooked together, the living room filled with laughter, and the study where Rose had spent countless hours researching maritime history. I could almost hear her voice, soft and reassuring, guiding me through the storms of life. The lighthouse was more than just a structure. It was a repository of our love, a testament to the years we had weathered together. But now as I stood alone, it felt hollow, the walls closing in on me. I could still picture Rose in her favorite chair by the window, a book in her lap, her eyes sparkling with life. She had always been my anchor, my guiding light. Without her, I felt adrift. I glanced around the room, noticing the subtle changes Ryan and Vanessa had begun to make. They had moved my things, rearranging the furniture as if they were trying to erase her presence. The thought stung, igniting a flicker of anger within me. How could they not see the history embedded in these walls? How could they be so callous? As I moved to the living room, I caught sight of the old photographs we had hung on the walls, snapshots of our lives together, moments frozen in time. There was the picture of our wedding day, Rose radiant in her gown, and another of us standing proudly in front of the lighthouse after its restoration. Each frame told a story, each image a reminder of the love we had built. But the memories came with a price. I felt the weight of Ryan's whisper echoing in my mind. Now we just need to deal with the old sea captain. The realization that my son and daughter-in-law were plotting against me sent a chill down my spine. They thought they could push me aside, take control of what Rose and I had built together, but they underestimated the resolve of an old sea captain. I needed to gather my thoughts and prepare for the storm ahead. The winds outside were beginning to pick up a harbinger of the tempest that was not just brewing in the ocean, but also within my family. I walked to the window, looking out at the turbulent sea, and I could feel the storm approaching, both the weather and the storm of betrayal brewing within my own household. It was in that moment I made a decision. I would not let them erase Rose. I would not allow them to seize control of our legacy without a fight. The lighthouse was not just a building. It was a symbol of our love and resilience. I would protect it and her at all costs. Wednesday morning, October 9th, brought an invasion disguised as concern. I watched from my study window as Ryan's SUV pulled up to the lighthouse, loaded with suitcases and boxes. The fog was just lifting off the water, revealing a gray day that matched my mood perfectly. "Dad, we're here to help," Ryan announced as he and Vanessa carried their belongings through the front door. His smile was too bright, too practiced. After 40 years of reading weather patterns, I knew when a storm was building behind calm skies. Vanessa moved through my home like she was conducting an inspection, her sharp eyes cataloging everything. "Oh, Frank would be so much more comfortable if we rearranged things a bit," she said, not bothering to ask my opinion. She spoke about me in third person, as if I weren't standing right there. Within an hour, they had claimed the guest bedroom and begun what Vanessa called organizing. I watched her box up Rose's collection of maritime history books, the ones she'd spent decades gathering from estate sales and antique shops along the coast. Each volume told the story of Maine's seafaring past, but to Vanessa, they were just clutter. "These old books are gathering dust. Jim," she said, taping up another box with efficient movements, "will store them safely in the basement. Much cleaner this way." Clean, that word seemed to be her favorite. Everything needed to be clean, modern, minimalist. She moved through our home like a tide sweeping away the accumulated treasures of nearly 50 years together. Rose's reading glasses disappeared from the kitchen windowsill. The small brass compass she'd kept on her desk, a gift from our first anniversary, vanished into one of Vanessa's reorganization boxes. Ryan busied himself with what he called safety improvements. He removed the nautical charts Rose had framed and hung in the hallway, claiming the glass could be dangerous if there was an earthquake. In Maine, where earthquakes were about as common as tropical storms. "We're just thinking of your welfare, Dad," he said, rolling up a chart that showed the shipping lanes Rose had traced in red ink, marking the routes of vessels that had sought refuge in our harbor over the decades. I said nothing, but I filed away every detail. In the Coast Guard, we'd learned to read the intentions of other vessels by watching their movements, their patterns. Ryan and Vanessa weren't here to help. They were establishing a beachhead. By afternoon, they had transformed the living room into something that belonged in a furniture showroom, rather than a home. The worn leather chair where Rose used to read was pushed into a corner, replaced by a sleek, modern couch that looked like it had never been sat in. The coffee table that had held her teacup rings and bookmarks was covered with Vanessa's interior design magazines. "Isn't this so much better?" Vanessa asked, surveying her handiwork. "More space, better flow. Very feng shui." I nodded and retreated to my study, the one room they hadn't yet invaded. From my desk, I could see the harbor where lobster boats were heading out for the afternoon haul. Those fishermen understood something. Ryan and Vanessa didn't. You don't change course in familiar waters without understanding the currents and the rocks beneath the surface. They thought they were dealing with a grieving old man who would be grateful for their attention. They had no idea they'd just boarded a ship whose captain was still very much in command of his vessel. The lighthouse that had guided ships safely home for 150 years was now harboring pirates. But every good captain knows that pirates, no matter how clever they think they are, always reveal their true intentions eventually. I just had to wait for them to show their hand. Saturday morning. October 12th, I woke to the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below a familiar melody that used to soothe me. But today it felt like an ominous warning. The sun fought to break through the clouds, casting a dim light over Mackenzie Lighthouse. I got out of bed, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. As I made my way to the kitchen, the first thing I noticed was the emptiness. The kitchen table, once adorned with Rose's favorite flowers, now felt stark and unwelcoming. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the salty air, but it did little to lift my spirits. I poured myself a cup, trying to gather my thoughts. Just as I took a sip, I heard noises from the living room. Ryan and Vanessa were up early, chatting animatedly about their plans for the day. I did my best to ignore them, but their voices carried a sharp edge that cut through my morning routine. It was as if they were plotting the next phase of their invasion. I stepped into the living room, my heart sinking at the sight before me. The furniture had been rearranged again, and the walls that once displayed our cherished memories now felt bare and lifeless. The nautical charts that Rose had carefully framed were gone, replaced by modern art that felt out of place in our home. "Good morning, Dad," Ryan said, his tone overly cheerful. "We thought we'd make some changes to brighten things up around here." "Brighten things up?" I echoed, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "You mean erase everything that reminds me of Rose?" Vanessa turned to me, her smile faltering for a moment. "We just want the place to feel fresh, Dad. It's important for you to start anew." I could feel the anger rising within me, but I knew I had to keep my composure. After all, I was the old sea captain navigating treacherous waters. I couldn't let them see how much their actions affected me. Instead, I chose to observe, to gather information, and to plan my next move. As I scanned the room, my gaze fell upon a cardboard box in the corner, marked with the word "Donations." I knew instantly what it contained: Rose's cherished items, the very things that made our house a home. The thought of her beloved books and photographs being given away sent a wave of cold dread through me. "Where are you taking those?" I asked, my voice low and steady. "Oh, just some things we thought could be better used elsewhere," Ryan replied casually, avoiding my gaze. "Better used?" I shot back, unable to contain the bitterness. "Those things belong to Rose. They have history. They have meaning." "Come on, Dad," Vanessa chimed in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You need to let go of the past. It's time to move forward." I felt my resolve harden. They were underestimating me, thinking I was just an old man too lost in grief to fight back. But they didn't know the depths of my love for Rose or the strength that lay within me. I would not allow them to erase her memory or take away the life we had built together. As I turned away from them, I caught a glimpse of the lighthouse beacon through the window. It shone through the fog, a steadfast symbol of guidance and protection. In that moment, I decided that I would protect this legacy, Rose's legacy, with every ounce of strength I had left. Friday afternoon, October 15th. I stepped into the kitchen, the familiar aroma of strong coffee lingering in the air. But the moment I glanced at the table, my heart sank. There it was, a brochure for Ocean View Senior Living, its bright colors stark against the aged wood of the table. Vanessa was humming to herself, her back turned, as she busied herself with what she called preparations. The smile on her face was too bright, too cheerful for the somber mood that hung over the lighthouse since Rose's passing. I approached the table, my fingers trembling slightly as I picked up the brochure. The glossy paper felt foreign in my calloused hands. "We thought this would be a great option for you, Dad," Vanessa said casually as she turned to face me, her smile unwavering. "It's a lovely place with beautiful views of the ocean. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." I held the brochure up, my voice steady but firm. "I don't want to live in a place like this, Vanessa. I want to stay here in our home." Her expression faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered. "But Dad, this situation isn't safe for you. Living alone at your age, especially in this old lighthouse, is dangerous. What if you fall or need assistance? That's not your decision to make." I shot back, the heat rising in my chest. I could feel the tide of anger swelling within me, but I fought to keep my composure. I wasn't going to let them push me out of my home, out of the life Rose and I had built together. "Think of it as a new beginning," she continued, her tone sweet yet insistent. "You'll have people around you, activities to keep you busy. It'll be good for you, good for me." The thought of being uprooted from everything I knew, from the memories that filled every corner of this lighthouse, made my stomach churn. I glanced around the kitchen, taking in the small details that made it ours: the chipped teacups Rose had collected, the wooden spoons she had carved by hand. They had no idea what they were asking me to give up. As I turned the brochure over, I noticed a small print at the bottom. "Limited availability, call for a tour today." There was an urgency in the wording that felt manipulative, a push to make a decision before I had time to think it through. Just then Ryan walked in, a casual air about him. "Hey, Dad, what do you think about the new place? It's modern, and you'll love the community events. I felt my resolve hardening. I think you both are trying to take control of my life, and I won't allow it. Ryan's smile faded, replaced by a look of annoyance. Come on, Dad. This is for your own good. We're just trying to help. Help! I echoed the word, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. This isn't help. It's a takeover. Their expressions shifted, and I could see the irritation brewing beneath their surface calm. Vanessa crossed her arms and leaned against the counter, her demeanor shifting from sweet to confrontational. Frank, we're only thinking of your safety, she insisted. You need to think about what's best for you, not just what you're comfortable with. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their words pressing down on me. The lighthouse had always been a symbol of safety and guidance, a place where I had weathered many storms with Rose. I couldn't let them strip that away. Suddenly I knew what I had to do. I'll think about it, I said, my voice low but steady, masking the storm brewing inside me. But for now I want to keep my things as they are. This is my home. With that, I turned away, leaving the brochure on the table, a symbol of the battle that was just beginning. I wouldn't let Ryan and Vanessa dictate my life. The lighthouse would remain my sanctuary, and I would fight to protect the legacy Rose had left behind. Friday evening. October 18th brought an unexpected visitor to the lighthouse. The wind had picked up considerably, rattling windows and carrying the scent of an approaching storm. I was in my study when I heard familiar footsteps on the wooden porch. Molly, my 17-year-old granddaughter, stood at the door with worry etched across her young face. She glanced nervously over her shoulder before stepping inside. "Grandpa, we need to talk," she whispered, looking around cautiously to make sure Ryan and Vanessa weren't within earshot. "What's troubling you, sweetheart?" I asked, guiding her to the living room. She sat on the couch, edge hands fidgeting with her sweater. "I overheard Mom and Dad talking on the phone last night. They were speaking to someone about legal stuff, incompetency hearings, and guardianship." My blood ran cold. The words hit me like a rogue wave, confirming my worst fears. They weren't just planning to move me out. They were preparing to strip away my legal rights entirely. "Are you sure about what you heard?" I kept my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Molly nodded, tears welling. "Dad mentioned your name and said something about getting a doctor to evaluate you. Mom was talking about how much the lighthouse is worth and how they could protect your interests better than you could." The familiar weight of betrayal settled in my chest, heavier than the approaching storm clouds. My own son was plotting against me, using legal maneuvers to declare me unfit. "There's more," Molly continued, trembling. "They've been meeting with some lawyer named Harrison. I heard Mom say they need to move quickly before you do something stupid with the property." The television was broadcasting the evening weather report. A major storm system is approaching the Maine coast, expected to make landfall Sunday evening. Residents should prepare for high winds and dangerous surf conditions. 2 storms were heading our way, one from the Atlantic and one brewing in my own home. "Grandpa, what are you going to do?" Molly asked, her voice filled with worry no teenager should carry. I took her hand, feeling strength that reminded me of Rose. "I'm going to weather this storm just like I've weathered many others. But be careful, Molly. Don't let on that you told me." She squeezed my hand tightly. "I don't want them to take you away from here. This is your home, and it will remain my home," I assured her, though I wasn't entirely sure how. Ryan appeared in the doorway, his smile too bright for the dim evening light. "There you are, Molly. We were wondering where you'd gone." "Just visiting with Grandpa," she replied, quickly wiping her eyes and forcing a smile. "Well, it's getting late, and with this storm coming, we should probably head home," Ryan said, but his eyes lingered on me with a calculating look. After they left, I stood at the lighthouse window, watching waves grow larger and more violent against the rocks below. The beacon swept across the turbulent water, its light cutting through the gathering darkness. I had weathered many storms in my 74 years, but this one felt different. This time the danger wasn't just from wind and waves, it was from the people who should have been my safe harbor. But I was still the captain of this lighthouse, and I wouldn't go down without a fight. Monday morning, October 21st. I woke before dawn with the clarity that comes from years of navigating treacherous waters. The wind had grown stronger, and I could feel the approaching storm. But today wasn't about weather. It was about charting a course through the legal storm my family had unleashed. While Ryan and Vanessa slept, I quietly made my way to the study. From a locked drawer, I retrieved an old address book filled with contacts from 4 decades with the Coast Guard. These weren't just names, they were lifelines. My first call was to Detective Rachel Dawson, a former Coast Guard colleague who'd transitioned to civilian law enforcement. We'd served together on rescue operations, and I knew she understood preparation and precision. "Jim McKenzie," she said warmly. "It's been too long. What can I do for you?" I explained the situation carefully, keeping my voice low. Rachel listened without interruption. "That's serious, Jim. If what you're saying is true, we need documentation. Do you have evidence of their intentions?" "Not yet, but I'm working on it," I replied. "What I need to know is my rights under maritime property law. This lighthouse has federal historical designation." A smart thinking. Maritime properties have special protections. I'll research the specifics and get back to you. Be careful if they're planning guardianship proceedings. They might accelerate their timeline. After hanging up, I turned to Rose's filing system. She'd spent years documenting the lighthouse's history. Hidden behind maritime journals, I found what I needed: a folder labeled Lighthouse Federal Protection Status. Inside were documents from 1978, when Mackenzie Lighthouse became a National Historic Landmark. Rose had done her homework. The federal designation meant any property changes required National Park Service approval. Ryan and Vanessa couldn't simply sell to developers without extensive federal review. But there was more. Rose had documented the lighthouse's role in Coast Guard operations, including its use as a navigation aid for commercial shipping. The property fell under maritime jurisdiction, which meant different legal standards applied. I made copies and secured originals in my safety deposit box at Bar Harbor First National. If they wanted a legal battle, they'd discover this old sea captain had been charting these waters longer than they knew. My phone rang, Rachel calling back. "Jim, I've got good news and concerning news. Good news, your lighthouse has significant legal protections. Concerning news, there's already a petition filed in probate court questioning your competency. It's scheduled for Thursday. Thursday. The same day the storm was supposed to hit. They'd timed it perfectly, thinking weather would prevent me from mounting an effective defense. There's something else," Rachel continued. "The doctor they're using, Dr. Marcus Webb, he's got a reputation for rubber stamping these competency cases. You'll need your own medical evaluation." I looked out at the lighthouse beacon, already visible in the gray morning light. For 150 years, this beacon had warned ships away from dangerous waters. Now it was time for me to do the same. "Rachel, I need one more favor. Can you recommend a doctor who can't be bought?" "I know just the person, Dr. Elizabeth Morrison at Maine Medical. She's tough, thorough, and completely incorruptible." As I hung up, I felt the familiar sensation of a ship finding its true course. The storm was coming from two directions, but I'd weathered worse. This old lighthouse keeper still had a few tricks left in his navigation charts. Thursday evening, October 24th. I stood in the beacon room of Mackenzie Lighthouse, my heart pounding in sync with the rising winds outside. The storm had arrived fierce and unrelenting, battering the coast with waves that crashed against the rocks with thunderous roars. I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on me, but I had made my decision. I would not let Ryan and Vanessa take my home. As I adjusted the controls of the lighthouse beacon, I glanced out at the tumultuous sea. The light swept across the dark water, cutting through the chaos like a knife. I had spent decades mastering this machinery. It was my lifeline, my connection to the world beyond the tumult of my family. The door creaked open, and I turned to see Ryan and Vanessa enter, their expressions tense. The wind howled behind them, and I could feel their unease. "Dad, we need to talk," Ryan said, his voice barely audible over the storm. He stepped closer, his eyes darting toward the window, as if he feared the tempest would swallow him whole. "I don't have time for your games tonight, Ryan," I replied, my voice firm. "This isn't just about you or Vanessa. This is about the lighthouse and what it means." "Exactly. That's why we need to get you out of here," he insisted, desperation creeping into his tone. "You could get seriously hurt in a storm like this. We're trying to protect you. Protect me, or protect your interests." I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "You want to sell this place to take everything Rose and I built together. You think I don't see that?" Vanessa stepped forward, trying to interject with a calm demeanor. "Jim, we're only thinking of your safety. It's dangerous here. This isn't just about the house. It's about your health and well-being." As they spoke, the lighthouse began to shake under the force of the wind. The power of nature matched the intensity of our confrontation. I could feel the storm raging outside, mirroring the storm within my own family. "Is that why you've been plotting behind my back?" I demanded, my voice rising above the din of the storm. You think I'm too old to fight for my own life." Ryan hesitated, his bravado faltering. "We're not trying to hurt you, Dad. We just want what's best for you. In your eyes, what's best is getting rid of me," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "You're not thinking of me. You're thinking of the money you can get from selling this lighthouse." As the wind howled louder, I realized that this confrontation was more than just about property. It was a battle for my identity, my dignity, and my legacy. I had spent my life protecting this lighthouse, just as I had protected my family. Now it was time to stand firm against the storm. "I will not allow you to take anything from me," I said, my resolve hardening. "You may think you can force me out, but I'll fight for what is rightfully mine." The storm outside intensified, and I knew that this was only the beginning. As the lighthouse beam cut through the darkness, I was reminded of my duty, not just to the lighthouse, but to Rose and the life we had built together. I stood in the beacon room of Mackenzie Lighthouse, gripping the controls with a steady hand as the wind howled outside. The waves crashed violently against the rocks, and the light from the beacon swept across the turbulent sea, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. With each rotation of the light, I felt a surge of determination. I had spent years mastering this machinery, and I knew that it was not just a guide for ships. It was a symbol of resilience. As the storm raged, I focused on the task at hand, ensuring that the beam cut through the darkness to guide the Coast Guard rescue vessel safely to shore. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. "Mackenzie Lighthouse, this is the Coast Guard. We're responding to your distress signal. Can you confirm your location?" "Coast Guard, this is Jim Mackenzie. I'm at the lighthouse and I need assistance. There are 2 individuals here who—" Before I could finish, the door swung open and Ryan and Vanessa stumbled in, soaked and breathless. "What are you doing?" "Dad, you need to get out of here," Ryan shouted over the wind. I turned to face them, my resolve hardening. "You 2 need to leave. This is my home, and I'm not going anywhere." Just then the Coast Guard vessel appeared through the storm, its lights flashing as it navigated the rough waters. I felt a rush of relief. Help was finally here. As the boat drew closer, I could see the crew preparing to board. "Stay back," I warned Ryan and Vanessa, raising my voice to be heard over the storm. "This is between me and the Coast Guard." As the rescue team arrived, they quickly assessed the situation. Detective Sarah Chen, who had been monitoring the storm response, stepped forward. "Jim, we've been investigating Ryan and Vanessa's activities. We need to talk." "Talk?" Ryan scoffed, panic rising in his voice. "What do you mean?" "These documents," Sarah said, holding up a stack of papers. "We found evidence of forgery related to your attempts to declare your father incompetent. This is not about safety. This is about control." Ryan's face turned pale as he staggered back. "I didn't do anything wrong." The Coast Guard crew moved in, securing the area. "Ryan Mackenzie, you are under arrest for conspiracy and fraud," one officer stated firmly. As they led Ryan and Vanessa away, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The storm outside was fierce, but inside I could finally breathe. The weight of their betrayal lifted, replaced by a sense of justice. Detective Chen looked at me, her expression softening. "You did well, Jim. The lighthouse is federally protected, and with these documents, we can ensure its safety." I nodded, my heart swelling with pride. Rose would have been proud of the legacy we had built together. The lighthouse had withstood many storms, and now it had weathered this one as well. As the Coast Guard crew began to secure the area, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The beacon continued to shine brightly, a guiding light for all who sailed these waters. I was no longer just a grieving husband. I was a protector of our shared history, standing firm against the tides of greed and betrayal. Sunday afternoon, November 3rd, I sat in the living room of Mackenzie Lighthouse, sunlight spilling through the windows. A week had passed since the storm, and since the Coast Guard had taken Ryan and Vanessa away. The burden of their betrayal was lifting, replaced by a quiet strength I hadn't felt in years. Molly stayed close, helping me restore the space Rose once loved. Together we unpacked boxes, hung old maritime charts, and placed Rose's photographs back on the walls. With each piece returned, the lighthouse felt alive again, filled not with loss, but with memory and warmth. A knock at the door brought Pastor Williams, carrying a basket from the community. He smiled warmly. "Jim, we're proud of how you weathered the storm." His words filled me with gratitude. For the first time in weeks, I felt truly supported. We spoke about the future, and he told me the Historical Society was planning an exhibit to honor the lighthouse. The thought of sharing Rose's story filled me with hope. I gladly agreed, knowing this was a way to keep her spirit alive. As the sun sank low, painting the ocean gold, I understood the path ahead. The lighthouse would not only guide sailors, it would stand as a symbol of love, resilience, and legacy. As I sat in the warm glow of the lighthouse, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I reflected on the journey I had taken. The storm that had threatened my home had also taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, love, and faith. Through it all, I felt the presence of God guiding me, reminding me that I was never alone in my struggles. In the face of betrayal, I found strength in my memories of Rose and the love we shared. It was a testament to the power of faith and family bonds. These grandpa stories are not just tales of my life. They are reminders of the legacies we leave behind and the importance of standing up for what is right. As we navigate the challenges of life, let's remember to lean on our faith and trust in God's plan. Each trial can lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our purpose. If you enjoyed this story and found inspiration in it, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments. What lessons have you learned from your grandpa stories? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt tales that celebrate love, resilience, and the beauty of family. Together, let's honor the legacies that shape us all.